everybody. Welcome to InPodSicated with Big Z. In the house this week, we've got Gabriel Cortez, Dr. Gabriel Cortez. He's a professor at Northeastern Illinois University. Good friend of mine from the neighborhood. Representing the Bulls already.
That's
yeah,
right.
they did win. They did win this week. They won last night. Yeah, they got blown out the day before, but definitely great to have you, Dr. Cortez. Well, let's just get into it, man. Let's talk about what your profession is, so that people just exactly know where to go. You're a doctor of education. That's correct?
That is correct. This is I earned my PhD in educational policy studies in 2008 from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So I've been a professor at Northeastern Illinois University. This is my 16th year, bro, coming in. No, I'm in my 16th year, right? Because we're in the middle of the academic year. But you know, in terms of what I do, so I'm a professor in educational leadership. I prepare school principals, right? And it's funny because I always have to explain that because people are like, well, "What is it that you teach?" Like, and every time I tell my brother Gerald, he's like, "Man, why can't you just have something simple like math?"
First of all, math is simple,
right? You know, you teach math, cool. You teach math, now I know, right? But now I have to explain like leadership, and everybody's like, "What do you mean leadership?" I go, "Well, you know, it's a graduate program, master's program for teachers who want to become principals, and you can't, you know, you have to have earn a master's degree in educational leadership, which is also a certification program, which is called the principal preparation program, right?" Okay. So it's, you know, right, it's not just a simple to explain it, especially for folks who, you know, are either first gen in terms of going to college or who just haven't gone, right? We come from a working class community where a lot of folks didn't go to college. So just, you know, people just like, well, okay, so you prepare your teacher? And like, no, I'm a professor. Right? So I do that. I also I'm the director of the Enlace Leadership Institute, which is a master's program in higher education, which is different because the principal prep program is actually for K through 12, okay, right? High schools, elementary schools, etc., and all of them, right? Charter, public, suburban, independent, whatever, right? It's all under the state of Illinois. But in terms of my other program in higher ed, I prepare students who want to work in higher education, like community colleges, universities, not so much as professors, but, you know, financial aid. We have a lot of students who go to get jobs as advisors, right? A good number have moved up. Some of them are deans now. For one of them in particular, Dr. Maida Gaitan, who became a doctor herself. So she runs the University Center of Lake County. So she's one of our like prominent alumni that we always hype up, right? But in terms of what I do, that's what I do. I prepare leaders at all levels of education, and I think I'm the only one.
Are you the only one?
I mean, yeah, in both camps, yeah.
Okay.
Right, because of course we have, you know, colleagues in ed leadership K through 12, and then our colleagues in the higher ed. But I'm the one that's in both.
Oh wow,
it's a blessing, bro. It really is.
Yeah. And then how long have you been doing both?
So I became director of the Enlace. Oh, I forgot to mention too, the Enlace Leadership Institute. I became director in 2018. So this is my 7th year being director. And the way it works, so at Northeastern Illinois University, which is a state university, right? We professors are required to teach 3 classes a semester, right? In the fall and in the spring. And then you have the option to teach a class in the summer if you want, and you do get paid extra on top of your salary for it.
Nice.
So, you know, that's a perk, right? But in terms of so I wanted to run and coordinate this program. They give me a course release, so then I only teach 2 classes per semester, right? And then in absence of that other class, my responsibility of running the program, right, takes up for that. So I don't get paid for to run the program.
Okay.
And it's funny because I have students, you know, in the higher ed master's program, they're like, "You don't get paid?" And you're like, "I thought this was your main job." I'm like, no, this is like my side job. My primary job is I teach, prepare school principals."
Right.
And they just get like befuddled because they're just like, "Oh my God, dog." And I let them know, because I'm like, "Look, bro, like I may slip on some things because I do. like, don't hold that against me because I'm a one person team here, and my mentality, my health, my mental health is important to me. So I'm not going to be working on the weekends.
Right. No, rightfully so. Especially if you're not getting paid.
Right. So I mean, I love the work, right? But at the same time, like, you just can't be on top of everything because there's just a lot, and and that's a lesson for a lot of people because people get burnt out. I get colleagues, they're always stressed out, and I'm just like, bro, a lot of this is like not your doing. Like you're trying to put out fires that it has nothing to do with you, and it's like, take a breath, we'll be okay. Because when you go to the hospital, guess what? Somebody's just going to replace you.
Yeah, and I can attest to that being a teacher myself. Like, I remember when I'm not going to put the name of the school out there, but I transferred. I transferred from a West Side school to a North Side school, and I went from teaching PE and health, and they're like, "Well, you want to be athletic director?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a stipend. Great, cool. That's what I wanted to do, anyways. That's like it was an aspiration at that point." Because I love sports. So what ended up happening is that they were supposed to take a class away from me from my class. So instead of teaching 5 classes, I was supposed to teach 4 classes so I could have time to be an athletic director. So I would be at work at 6 a.m. and get home about 11 p.m. on a daily basis. So not only am I teaching PE and health, so that's 2 different courses.
Right.
Now I'm also doing that, and I was also running the student voice committee. So I was helping with students that were we were the initial program, the pilot program for CPS for doing that, which teaches kids how to advocate for themselves in the school and out of school, and be able to connect with colleges and see how people organize at colleges. So they were able to do that. I sent some kids to go see Obama's last speech. A lot of cool stuff they were able to do. How to fix the school. They wanted to hang TVs in the school so that they can put the announcements. So when are games? When is there a play? When is this? When is that? So they wanted to build school spirit because that's what they felt like the school was lacking. And then a lot of the issues was the hurdles that the administration kept putting on there. Well, it's going to cost this. It's going to cost that. I'm like, you're not putting any money. These kids they'll be given a grant based on what it was, and all we need is CPS to put in the bid for someone to hang up the TVs. The students will take care of all the production and all of the news that will be updated on. They'll be in charge of everything. And the administration kept pushing their meeting back and back and back and just rescheduling them. So they felt very disheartened because they're like, we're trying to do something nice for the school because we care about everybody here, and it feels like admin doesn't. And and I'm doing all these things, and I ended up in a hospital with walking pneumonia, the flu, bronchitis, and exhaustion.
Oh my God!
And like you say, they'll replace you the next day. And I'm athletic director, right? So I have to make sure that my reps are getting paid, the buses are still scheduled, the games are still scheduled. I'm doing this from the hospital bed because I make sure that I'm doing stuff for the kids. I come back to work because I didn't even get a phone call, card, a set of flowers, nothing from them, nothing, not a bag of hot chips, nothing. So I'm walking in with my colleagues. They're like, "Oh man, glad to be back. We missed you." I'm like, "No, I appreciate that, man. I really do." And we walk in, and the administrator's office is, as you walk in through the back of the building, they stop their conversation mid-sentence to look at me, and then continue to talk. And I'm walking my colleague, and I'm like, I told you, I told you, you're replaceable. They do not care about you. You are just a body that's helping them out, and until you stop helping them, they don't care. So it's always important to take care of your mental and physical health first. Everything else can be done at a later point. Yes.
And to that point, man, because I prepare. So all my students in the K-12 program, they're all teachers, or a good number are counselors, right? Sometimes they're like speech therapists, but for the most part, the majority are teachers and a good number of counselors, right? So these are adults. You need to have at least 2 years of experience teaching in order to become eligible to be in the program.
Right.
So I get a range of folks from like 24 years old to like 60, right? The majority being around in the 30s, right, upper 20s and stuff. But it's a wide range for sure. And in terms of mental health, 11 today's what, 13, 13 and a half years ago. Man, time flies, right? My nephew, little Louis, rest in peace, he passed away. And I dedicated, like I was like, I'm going to dedicate a year to you. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what that means yet for now. But eventually I got into healing, right, practices. I got into restorative justice. And I felt that was something he needed. You know what I'm saying? Because he went through a lot as a teen, as a youngster. And then I was like, so many kids in schools that are like him, who just didn't have stability, who made bad decisions, right? That eventually caught up with him. And so I was like, okay, I started talking to people. And I had a friend, she was a yoga instructor, and she would always share with me like how to take care of yourself, wellness, breathing, like all this stuff, right? And we're from the neighborhood, bro. We grew up right West Town, Chicago, and Damon, breathing like, all right, there, like what, like what you mean you gotta breathe? And I remember asking my brother Gerald, I was like, bro, because I was doing this thing behind my back, how you go like this and you stretch, it opens up your chest and all that. And I was like, hey, bro, can you do this? And he was like eating a cheeseburger at the time, and he was like, bro, when they lock me up, they need 2 handcuffs. You think I'm gonna try that? He's like, bro, no. So we're coming from that, right? Where it's just like, that's for ladies, right? That's for women. That's for white women. Yoga, that's for like white women, right? And of course, because we don't know that history, and we're just not taught that, right? And so I got into that. I was like, you know what? Okay, cool. So me being the dude that I am, in terms of like, I'm like you, let's get it, let's cut to the chase, boom, let's do what we gotta do. So I start each class with some breathing and stretching, right? Because my approach was like, I'm not gonna tell you it's good. No, I'm gonna show you how it's good, right? Because we're gonna do this together. And that's really, in terms of education and my philosophy, like people will tell you what's good, but they won't like walk with you.
They don't practice what they preach, right?
Yes, right. They're like, oh, you need to go do this. No, let's do this together. Like, show me how to do this, right? Because as you know, you're a teacher. You tell students, okay, here's what you need to do. You think they're gonna do it just because you know, right? No. You have to go through the classes with them and walk with them. So, and it's funny. At the beginning of the class, I'm like, okay, how many of you are stressed out in your jobs? Bro, everybody.
Everybody, right.
Right. You have like 18 students right in class. How many of you work with people who are stressed? How many of you work with students who are stressed? Everything. Parents, leaders. I was like, so everybody's stressed, right? And they're like, yeah. What are you doing about it? Right? I asked them that. So how many of you are actually doing something to keep up with that stress? And then before, when I started in 2011, I would get like a third of the class at least, which is like 6 out of 18, right? As an example. And that's just like, it's evident. Like, wow, you're not taking care of yourself. And I tell them, I go, I know as a teacher, I was like, I know, like, if you're doing this for the money, you're in the wrong field.
You can make money. You can make money. And especially if you're young, you can, do a lot of stuff to make money. But yeah, as you get older, you're like, my peace of mind is way worth more than that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I'm just like, well, let's make this part of the educational culture.
Yeah.
Right. Let's take 5 minutes of class to pause, right, and do all of this. And for the majority of people love it, bro. They some of them will come up to me like, Dr. Cortez, I really appreciate when we stretch. It's the only time I do it. I'm like, well, why don't you do it on your own?
Right.
Well, they're like, it's not part of my routine, right? Now that we need to make it part of your routine. And the best part is when I have students come up to me and say, I just want to share with you that I do this with my students, with my own students. And that was my goal, right? For little Louis, like I want you guys are teachers. So you have students under you, right? So please share this with them. Let them know that this is a part of what education is, right? Was it a wellness for ourselves, taking care of ourselves, mental health. Right. So it's kind of cool, man, that we agree with that. Like, I know you know the importance of that.
Yeah, and I've seen you do it firsthand. I've observed a couple of your classes, and it's something that I try to do as much as I can. I know I do it in my health class when I teach health, but I haven't taught health in a while. I did it for a couple of weeks last semester, but that is something that is important. And last semester as well, like I was teaching, I had a, what was it? We called it, so it was essentially a yoga class. And, on Fridays, I was like, our meditation Fridays. They're like, but what if we fall asleep? I'm like, then you did a great job meditating.
Yeah.
That in my eyes is an A. They're like, we can fall asleep. Like, no, you can meditate. If you happen to fall asleep, that means you did a great job. That means your body's relaxed and you're going to feel refreshed as you come up. And the kids at first, were like, oh, we just get to sleep in class. I'm like, no, there's a purpose to this. And also stop saying that because they'll take the class away.
Right.
Right. Yeah, you understand it is meditation, right? And then, they would journal about it and stuff like that.
That's
so they started to really connect and have a good time and understand that, mental wellness is as important as physical wellness in PE. So that a lot of stuff that does translate too. I do a lot of team building right now, especially with this new set of students that I have, and the importance of that. And they're like, but these games are weird. I'm like, yes, they're meant to be weird. These games are meant to put you in positions for you to either do critical thinking, critical problem solving, learn how to communicate with each other. And then also when you're communicating, listen to understand, not listen to argue. And that's very hard with teenagers to make them understand that just because we're having a conversation doesn't mean I'm attacking you personally.
Right.
Yeah. So
are they from Chicago? I was thinking because in Chicago, that's just in our blood.
Oh my God! Yeah, you're always on the defense, right? You're always looking over your shoulder. Yeah, definitely a lot of that. So, let's transition over to we grew up pretty much on the same neighborhood. I mean, what street did you go up on?
So I grew up on Chicago Avenue.
Yeah.
Right. And as we know, I believe you grew up on the other side of Damon near Commercial. I don't even know.
Yeah, I was on Walcott and Iowa.
Okay, so yeah, you were on the north side of Chicago,
across street from Nilda's. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, by George's place then. That's right.
Yeah,
I remember now. That's right. Because the younger version of you is so different from you got the hair, right? You got the muscles and all of that. It's the how is it? I grew up on. I was born. First of all, let me just say I was born in living in West Town. Yeah. When I was born, we were living on Huron between Walcott and Wood. So my school was Talcott. Mm-hmm. Right. I actually went to Talcott.
Me too.
Kindergarten. Yeah, kindergarten year, just for 1 year. And then we moved away. We went to Mexico. We lived in Guadalajara for a year. Then we moved to Brownsville, which is on the border in Texas. Then we came back. And when we came back, we moved to Chicago Avenue between Levitt and Hoyne. Okay. So and people who kind of knew our neighborhood, they always say, "Oh yeah, by Columbia Furniture." Everybody always knew the Columbia Furniture because it was a big. A furniture store with big windows. You can see the whole showcase. And I was like, yes, right next to that, right. So that's where I grew up. In terms of the neighborhood, right. I never knew it was called West Town until the Yuppies started moving in, because I always referred to the neighborhood as Chicago and Damon. Yeah, like it wasn't like.
Yeah, we didn't say Ukrainian Village. We didn't say Humboldt Park. I mean, Humboldt Park was Humboldt Park because of the park, but we didn't say Uptown. No, we just named the streets. This is my neighborhood right here, the streets.
Like 18th Street. I'd be like, 26th Street. I didn't know Little Village. I didn't know Pilsen. Right. It was just these were the generations, right? Like my parents would refer to 18th, 18. Fui por la 18. They never said Pilsen, right? But anyways, when in the 90s, when I was working for Bickerdike, I don't know if ever heard of Bickerdike Affordable Housing Corporation.
No.
But they would have all these units that were affordable housing. I worked for them. I was one of their tenant organizers, and I would keep hearing West Town, West Town, what's West Town? Because they would talk about the housing crisis, right, in West Town. And I was like, oh, that's my neighborhood. I grew up in West Town. Wait a minute, right? That's me, right? I'm from Chicago and Damon, and I don't know, it's just that was, to me, that was the center point, Chicago and Damon. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Chicago, but I never said I'm from Chicago and Western. Not that, but I just always felt that corner connected all those different 4 areas, right?
Yeah.
You had for example, we look at these areas through ganglands, right? So
so
the southeast was the SDs, right? You had Jivers, but to me the SDs were like the biggest group.
Right.
To just north of that in Commercial Park, long time ago, you had the lowriders. I don't know if you remember them.
No, that I don't.
I remember them because I have 2 older brothers and used to fight with them.
Okay.
Right, but then you had the and I don't even know. I don't know if it was like so much the gens or it was a combination of like gens and I guess the Kings were further up north by division, right? So that's the way I kind of like saw the lenses. And then on the north west side of Chicago and Damon, you had the Ukrainians and you had Shy West, right, which was a gang.
Yeah.
And I tell people I grew up with white gangs. People are like, "What? There's white gangs? They not like they're originals."
No, they were struggling as much as we were.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, they didn't want us, right?
Right.
And that, as a historian, I was able to read about that, and I didn't know like the C-Notes, the Shy West, the Gaylords, all these like white gangs actually came together in the early 80s. We're like, yo, like our numbers are going down, Puerto Ricans, and they were always like referred to the Puerto Ricans. It wasn't like even Mexicans.
No,
like Puerto Ricans are like the numbers are growing, and we need to get together, and they did, right? But that's all the ideological stuff that was put together. But for me, growing up in that neighborhood, you had the Shy West, who, by the way, had the swastika sign as their gang sign.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like, what the hell? Like you see this in your neighborhood. And then going to Columbus, we used to play basketball in Columbus, remember that? And you would see the swastika there.
Yeah. And
then on the southwest side of Chicago and Damon, you had the C-Notes, which was the Italian American gang. They were famous for having connections with the mafia, with the mob, the outfit, which is famously known, right, in popular culture. But it was during the time where a lot of the Italians had left the neighborhood already, and there's a pipeline of the Italian community, and a lot of them were like second, third generation. It wasn't like a fresh. Some of them actually did, come from Italy, right? But the majority were like, they didn't speak Italian, right? They're more Americanized, whatever. But there was a pipeline of their families leaving to the Harlem area, Norwich, around there. Also Melrose Park, Franklin Park, right? So in the 80s, you would have like casinos, and they were based on Italian American gang, but you would have a lot of hillbillies, like Appalachian whites, as members, right? And part of it is because like, oh shit, we need to recruit to keep this moving. And now you have Latinos, right? So I bring that up because we grew up in that type of neighborhood where it's like, yes, it was diverse. Yes, you had these old gangs based on white ethnic identity, but because of the changes, it started kind of mixing up, right? Not that racism didn't exist, we know it did, but anyway, but we just grew up in that type of era. It was the 80s, 90s, before social media, right? When you hear gunshots and you're like, okay, that is we will estimate like what corner that was. That was out here.
Oh yeah,
right. So that's where I grew up. But when I go and talk to students, or when I talk about my story, because people ask me, hey, can you come talk to our students? First, there's like hardly any Latinos who are professors, right, in academia. We're like 1%, a very small percentage of academia representing. In educational leadership, that's the field I'm in, even less, And so I always get asked, like, man, you're a role model. Can you come talk? I was like, yes, of course. Like, I know how the importance of sharing space with people to let them know, look, bro, like, I did it. And then, I'm sure you could do it, whatever it is that you try and get into, you can do it as well. But what I always tell people is like, look, bro, I had 2 older brothers. I grew up in the hood. It wasn't easy, but I always pay tribute to my brothers for protecting me, because that's the reason why I'm a professor. Like it's the community that helped raise you, right? It's the community that protects you. And I'm like, I'm not gonna be here and be like, oh, I'm just a great individual and I did everything on my own. No, I had a lot of support, and of course, it starts with my parents, right? My dad, rest in peace, my mom, but my brothers in the hood, yeah, they took care of it. And we know because like people get jumped, they don't want anything to do with gun banging, but they get jumped. Guess what? They want to retaliate, right? So you see that a lot. So I always, count my blessings, bro. I'm the man. I'm grateful that they held it down for me. Of course, I had a lot of mentors, a lot of people supporting me in different ways. But first and foremost, to talk to the kids, I'm like, man, your family, they're taking care of you. Make sure you don't forget that.
Yeah, and definitely that was, I mean, obviously I'm a little younger than you, but that was kind of the experience that I had as well. And speaking to those corners, that's exactly what it was. I mean, I think I was born at Ashland and Pearson, and then we moved over to Chicago Avenue, right in front of what Edmar, and then
Edmar.
Yeah, so we were there before the McDonald's was there.
Oh.
So I saw the McDonald's get built. So from across the street. So that should tell you how old I am, right?
Yeah.
And then we moved over to over down Walcott. So that was the neighborhood I grew up with, and kids would play outside, and those would be your friends. And sometimes they would go to the same school with you, and sometimes they didn't, and whatever. But at the end of the story, everyone kind of reunited at Commercial Park. Right. So I know everyone that, different generations have gone, and I've seen kids, friends of kids, and then friends of friends become friends, and because their kids are playing there, and it's something that I really appreciate. But what was your experience of Commercial Park? Like, what was the first time you went there? And then let's speak on like everybody that you grew up with and any cool stories that you got about Commercial.
Yeah, well, Commercial Park, for sure has a special place in my heart, right? Going back to Chicago Avenue, I always felt in retrospect, right? Because you really don't think about it growing up. We're just in the border of so many different areas.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel, again, just in terms of being grateful, I feel blessed that my block was not hot. Mm-hmm. Because again, like the more close that stuff is around you, right, it pulls you in. But at the same time, because it was not hot, some people try to influence it one way or another. But it was overall great, right? But I never really crossed Damon Avenue, right? Like during grammar school. Mm-hmm. And as you know, like Mitchell, that's the school I went to, didn't like Talcott. We didn't like Chopin. Like people were just like, you're from that side, right?
Yeah.
People would assume that I was a Sino, being a light-skinned Latino. Mm-hmm. And so I was aware of that. I was aware of like, and you know that as well, like just because you're not a gang member, it doesn't, people will associate you, like, oh, you're from that neighborhood, that means you're a king. You're right. So we just stood in our pockets, right? But it wasn't until I went to high school where I met my best friend, George Garcia, right, who mm-hmm. and he was like, bro, you got to come by the park, So he was the one that brought me over, and he was the one like, hey, you're going to be cool, don't worry about it. Like, everybody's cool over here, like, broke it down. So that ensured me that I'm going to be okay going to Commercial Park. So we would go, I started hanging out probably like my sophomore year. Right. And I remember junior year, I went more, played basketball, met everybody. Kurt, right? George, of course, John, who ran the park, but he was not the director. That's another story, right?
We got time.
right. And I'm talking about John Davidson. A lot of people know who he is, who I respect, who I consider one of my mentors, who definitely influenced me, right? George had a great relationship with him. So when they would like talk after work and hang out, drop knowledge, whatever, I was a part of that. And I thank George for that, because, he's the one that brought me to proximity to John, Davidson. Mm-hmm. John saw that I was invested in school. I had, hopes going up to college. So he would spend time like talking to me. And so in that, and a lot of these people you knew, like, for example, everybody knew Magda Gonzalez, rest in peace, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody knew Magda because Magda was a type of young lady who was not scared to go in any neighborhood and talk to anybody. She was a loud person, right? And fearless, even though she'll tell you she was scared, but she wouldn't demonstrate, right? Mm-hmm. Or let you know. But she was the type that was like, I was hanging out with the Kings, I was hanging out with the Giants, like whatever, right? but we knew of her and her family, the Gonzalez family, which is a big family. So when I would go to Commercial Park, I would see Kurt, right? I knew him, George, and then I would meet people like you who were younger, Walter, RJ, etc. And you know, Ricky, is it Bonilla? Bodillo, yeah, Bodillo. Ricky, who was maybe like a few years older, so just all of that, right? And it was cool. People are just cool. We played basketball. What I remember the most is playing basketball at Commercial Park. To me, I played. I don't even know how many, but like I would say hundreds for sure, because we're talking about 21, right? You know, and I'm talking about the game 21. Like that could be like what, half an hour depending who's playing, but playing outside, right, on the asphalt, because it was black. I believe it was black asphalt, and it was it was at the time where Commercial Park at once had a regular
full-size court in the behind the park,
behind the park, but then like the Mexicans would run their own league. I mean the Mexicans was a group of Mexican workers, right, who formed their own league. But they were just drinking too much, and they would always leave like the bottles and stuff like that. And John, was always upset about that. So they switched it where now they put the rims back to back, where you can't play full court, right, to help like curb that, and it sucks, right? Because okay, that's a community, they're using it, but they're just not
respecting it.
Yeah, respecting it. It just sucks, right? But I remember that change, and then I remember we would play every Monday night at the inside court, and we would have some great games. Like I remember I wasn't much of a basketball player, of an athlete really, because I never played any organized sport, until my senior year of high school when I played football. But being at Commercial Park really exposed me to that, learning how to play with teams. I respect Kurt Gonzalez, because he's the one, like, he knew all the rules. You know what I'm saying? Like he was just very, like, we'll be playing, when you're in high school and you're playing basketball, right? No one really knows all the rules, right?
As a kid, you make up your own rules.
You make your own rules. But Kurt would like stop. Nope. Then he'll explain. You did this. I'm like, man, but I would pick it up, right? I would pick it up, and then it helped me understand the game a bit more, and that's what I remember the most. But also, in terms of Commercial Park, in comparison to like parks in general in Chicago, parks were very territorial, right?
Yeah.
Smith Park during that time, was very white. It was very people. It had a reputation of being racist because a lot of racist stuff did happen, right? But and then it was before their staff and everything got like diverse. Right, so you kind of had the sense like you're going to a suburban area. Like for me, at least, it felt that way because I went to Mitchell. I knew some people, right, and I was able to connect with them. So they were cool. My friend Sean Gorage, who was my locker partner in high school, but then people who didn't know you weren't as receptive, right? You just kind of felt it, and you're like, yeah, I'm not trying to be around here, right?
Yeah, that was a huge problem, even when I was still going to Commercial Park, especially with floor hockey. Yeah. Because Parks play against Park for citywide championships, and that I do remember. I wasn't part of that team, but I do remember that was a huge fight where parents and family members were jumping from the bleachers, because a fight broke out. Yeah. And because they were losing and they were antagonizing, the park and the families of the other side, and they were getting chippy and they were just butthurt because they were losing, and they were always winning. And for this, group of mosh posh of Latinos, because that's what we were mosh posh. We were every ethnicity of Latino there. And we had, a couple of, we had some blacks, we had some whites. We were literally the melting pot when it came to the Park District. And they didn't understand that. They're like, how are you guys all getting along? And how are you guys so good at everything now? Like, they did not like that. Right. And it was a big thing. I was not allowed to go to Smith Park. They're like, oh, just stay at Commercial. And the only time I went to different parks was when I was with John.
Right.
And that was through the team leadership program that, he was running. So that was what exposed me to different park districts and having friends at different parks and exploring the city as well. Because, as a teen growing up in our neighborhood, it's like your parents are like, who are you going with? What time you getting there? What time you getting back? Like, yeah, parents didn't play back then. So yeah, when it comes to the park, it's such a blessing that we got to grow up in the area that we did, so close to downtown, so close to United Center, right in between Wrigley and Comiskey at that point. We were in the heart of the city, and we just didn't know that. We just this is our neighborhood. And then, I still live here in the same neighborhood. I'm a little I'm over here by Grand and Western almost, but like people are like, you live over there? They're like, we come party over there. Like, yeah, I know. We laid down the foundation for y'all to party here because I was getting shot at, running away from gangs. That's a foundation of a good neighborhood, right? At one point, it was gang ridden, and that it is what it is. But that's the lifestyle that's all we knew. That's what it was, and that's where our parents lived because it was cheaper to live there than whatever rich neighborhood there was at that time. I don't even know what rich neighborhoods were.
Right.
Right. Right. At that point, the 80s, you're like, okay, everyone's just struggling here. Okay, cool.
And even though like just north of it in Wicker Park, we had old school mansions, right? Like
yep.
You would see it, but you just didn't think about it. Like
no,
I
didn't comprehend it at all.
That, and then I want to go back to John Davidson too, because in having a great relationship with him, he had told me one time that he's like, look, I grew up in this neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to go to Commercial Park as a participant, as a youngin. So in being from the neighborhood, he's mixed, right? His mom's white, his dad's black.
Mm-hmm.
So in being black, right, he's like, look, man, I know about discrimination. I know like how do we deal with it, right? So I just try to teach our kids that, look, man, the world is against you. He's like, but you need to keep your head up, have a vision, be organized, whatever. And he would always set up the gym show every year, right? Which was huge. And as an educator, like I appreciate that in retrospect. Like, man, John was a badass, bro.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, yeah. He goes, I wanted to bring something that made the kids think something outside of gambling, right? So he's like, we do this show, and the kids will do the platforms, the backgrounds, the scenes, practice for the songs they were singing, all of this, right? And he's like, because they're capable. I want to let them know they're capable of this. And I'm like, bro. And then the one of the important pieces that he mentioned is like, because I'm from the neighborhood, I knew all the gang leaders, and I told him, look, bro, like don't bring that to the park.
The park was off limits.
Yeah,
the park and the park kids were off limits.
Right, and so that's like something that leaders across the board need to know, right? And he was the assistant director, right? So the director wasn't doing any of that.
No,
that was all John. And again, like I just want to praise that because it's not that we just happen to be anywhere. We happen to be somewhere where a leader like John made sure these activities were initiated, right?
Yeah, he's definitely a pioneer, way ahead of his time, especially with the gym show. The gym show brought the entire neighborhood, and it wasn't just one night; it was a whole weekend of performances.
Right.
Like you don't understand. The place would be with rafter, with bleachers, all the way. It'd be like half of the gym with bleachers, and then the other half would be for the performance the long way. And it'd be one performance on the one end, and then as that finished, the kids would come out to all the way to the left end. These kids will come off. They're performing. So then there'd be someone coming into the middle. Like it was so orchestrated.
Right.
And John went out because he was a PE teacher.
Right.
He had his degree in physical education. But to be so technical with learning how to use like a soundboard and using sound and setting everything up, and then making the platforms and finding the costumes at Goodwills or donations, like he was the original one-man show. Like it's amazing what he did and how many lives he's touched. We're speaking to it. We got two people here right now that are successful because of him.
Right.
Him being a father figure for a lot of young men and young ladies who maybe at that time didn't have that at home for whatever reason, because like I said, we were all mixed and we all had different level of income, but no one no one ever talked about that. Everyone was like on an equal playing field. Didn't matter if you were white, black, Latino. It didn't matter. We were just all the neighborhood kids. It's a testament to him and his influence on what he's had on so many generations, because it's still going.
Right. All of that, and I also want to make a comment in terms of, do you remember? Like, I don't know if do you remember when schools used to have after school programs like the field house? Because I used to go to Mitchell. The Mitchell used to have you have the school and then you have a field house. Like Otis still has like the structure.
Like, you mean like? Well, I mean, I went to Columbus, so they had the mobiles.
Nah, no, I'm not talking about.
No,
we didn't go for 7th and 8th grade.
No, we didn't have that. I started going to the park. Might have been late 6th grade, early 7th grade, because from it went up to 6th grade at Columbus, and then we had to go to a different school. So, I got into De Diego. At that point, it was a really good school.
Oh, you're in De Diego, student. No wonder, bro. That was a great school.
It was a great school at that point.
It is, I'm sure,
and I ended up going from there to Lane Tech. So exactly. So when John was seeing that, kind of like you, like, oh man, this kid's a smart kid. He likes education. Likes being in school, so for me, it benefited me so much because I grew up with the older generation, and John made them do their homework for an hour.
Right.
And then he's going over chemistry, and I'm like, in 7th grade, like, what the hell are you talking about? And I just picked it up by osmosis, really. So when I got to high school, and then like, you got chemistry, I'm like, all right, I already know how to do that. And the chemistry teacher's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I've been doing this since 7th grade. He's like, how? I'm like, well, after school program every day, I'm learning chemistry because these idiots couldn't get it, and I'm picking up and doing equations before they could.
Without even wanting to.
Right. I'm like, give me your test right now. I bet you I pass it. And sure enough, he's like, you didn't get anything wrong. I'm like, I'm gonna make a deal with you, man. I'm just gonna come for test because I know all this stuff already. Yeah. And sure enough, I think he was like a first-year teacher. He didn't know any better. Yeah, but I didn't have to go to chemistry just because I knew everything already for what he was teaching. So that's the influence of John, man. That's definitely there, man.
So I want to make a comment in terms of the field house. So I don't think Diego had one then. So I don't think Chopin had one either, right? So not all the schools had one, but there was a field house. It's common throughout like many schools in CPS, and they would have programming after school, right? Okay. So in the field house, they would have ping pong, like table tennis. Mm-hmm. For the girls, we had Miss Cheers who would run the gymnastics, like activities, whatever. And then they would open up the school gym, and we'd go in there play basketball. During the spring, we would play softball, and we would play like Brontano. We would play Otis, right? We would go to these different parks, and they cut that out in '95. Like in '95, they cut that. CPS decided not to fund those activities anymore. Right. And they cut out all those field house. And to me, that's just such a shame, because like table tennis, I love table tennis. I don't know if you played it. I know they had
we played at the park.
Yeah, at the park. But like, I don't know. There was a difference between the park and at Mitchell, because at Mitchell the park had more stuff, so people were doing like all kinds of other stuff. Whereas the field house was so tight, and during the winter we would all be in there, and everybody would be around the table tennis, and we would have our own tournaments, right? Or basically, I got next, right? Whoever wins, holds the table. But that in itself, bro, like I just read like maybe 10 years ago that according to psychologists, the neurons in our brain, right? Like the more they get stimulated and activated, the more our brains are alive.
Yeah.
One of the activities that stimulates the brain the most in the most healthy way is table tennis.
Well, it's a lot of hand-eye coordination.
And beyond that,
it's reflexes. It's you're processing so fast because things are coming at you quickly. It's all of it, and this is why I went into PE, because I needed to like. It's I get into it. Administrators like, well, we want you to teach reading. I'm like, okay, is the English teacher doing push-ups? Are they doing jumping jacks? Because that's what stimulates and open up the neurons in the brain. So without me, they're not learning in the other classes. And I need you to understand that. Let me do my job the way I'm intended to, so that way the English teacher has it easier, or the math teacher, or the social science, whatever it is. But to your point about ping pong, there'd be times, where the gym would be occupied either by like, it was rented out or whatever. And, all of us were at the park. Okay. And I wasn't the biggest artist, so I wasn't with Mr. Guadalupe. So we would just hang out at the ping pong, rest in peace. We would just literally be at the ping pong tables and, play each other or play around the world or play a tournament. We would make up stuff, right? It's cold outside in the winter, so you couldn't hang out too much outside. So it was ping pong for us. So I do remember doing that a lot. So yeah, there really wasn't much to do at Commercial Park because it was a very small park. Either it was nice outside, we're doing stuff outside. Ping pong tables were there, tables and benches to just chill, and the gym and the art center, which unless Mr. Guadalupe was there, you couldn't use anyway. So we did the best we could with what we had.
Right. And even just for and what I'm bringing up is like just have it open, right? Like even though it was minimal, like when I read that piece about the neurology in our brain, I was like, oh my god, without even knowing. But that happens when you make things available, right? Like look, we have this program for you. Okay, it was probably a little half-assed, like, yeah, there's a ping pong table play, right? It was really not, structured,
right?
But either way, like, it still benefited me, without even knowing, and that's the power of these type of activities for you, right? Go do something, so yeah. In terms of the neighborhood, that's what I think about in terms of growing up, right? And now today, like I was telling my brother, like, bro, because my brother. Lou is my other brother, Luis. He's always like, these kids today, they don't know how it was. It's different, bro. I go, these kids today, we got the NFL having commercials like, take your kids out for an hour. Like they're not going out, right?
Our commercials are different. Our commercials were for the parents that forgot where their kids was. Do you know where your child is?
Right. Like, go get your child.
It was literally at like 9:30, 9:45, and 10 o'clock. They would play that commercial. Do you know where your child is? Because we were just outside.
Right. And then now it's like NFL's like, yo, take your kids out at least for an hour.
Yeah, it's an hour a day.
And it's just so it's a different upbringing, right? And if you're not an active parent who's intentional with that, who knows, where your student, not student, but your child.
Yeah.
Right. And so I compare that. Another thing I tell my brother in terms of differences, I'm like, bro, what's the biggest difference between this generation and ours? And he's like, what? The fact that we had to earn our quarters to play video games. Mm-hmm. Like, think about that. Like, kids today can play all fucking day. They die, boom. Guess what? You start all over.
They can play on their phone.
Right. But I'm talking about like just understanding the value.
Oh yeah.
Like a guy, like you get 3 guys to play Super Mario's, right? And if you get lucky, you get an extra guy. But that's 1 quarter. So if you mess up and you only have 2 quarters left, you only have 2 opportunities.
Yeah, definitely, especially. And that's why arcades died out, right? And now it's kind of retro now to go to arcades. Like the Logan Arcade is up the street. You got Replay and other ones, right? It's kind of a retro thing now to do. Yeah.
Wait. Do you remember the arcades?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like now, I went to Lane Tech, so we had an arcade across the street. That's where I spent my lunch periods, right? So for us, it's completely different. Like we grew up with, you go to Laundromat, there'd be an arcade there, 1 or 2, right? You go to Ducks, there'd be 1 or 2 arcades there, right? There's different, and the thing is like, oh man, I got 1 quarter left. That's it. So you got to get really good, or else you'll be dying really quickly, and then your happiness is done in 5 minutes. So I know what you're saying, where you have to earn, games have to be earned and stuff like that. But also, like, we didn't get allowance. I didn't get an allowance. I got a roof over my head and got a meal, a hot meal, and clothes on my back. That's what my parents gave me. That was my allowance. They allowed me to live. I was allowed to live in their house. So that was what it was. If the only way I would get money sometimes would be by doing chores, and then like I was allowed to return the bottles. And I know you remember this, going to Edmar, Coke, Pepsi, it would come in a carton, it kind of looks like the 4-pack of the Coca-Colas, that the little ones. It used to be an 8-pack, Coca-Colas, and they were all glass. So you return that back and you would get your deposit, and he would let me keep the deposit. And that would be like every 2 weeks. So like I had like $1.40. Yeah. So I would end up with money. I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm like, do I really want to spend this money at the arcade? Like I've worked so hard for it. Like, yes, you have to have some value to it. And I think that's very lost on the youth, obviously. But we're at that point. We're the old guys now. We're like, hey, you remember this? Hey, you kids don't know what you're doing. But it's a different upbringing, like you said. Parents who lived through what we lived through now are like, oh, I don't want my kid outside to get shot. I want to, and if they live in a rough neighborhood, right, it's rightfully so. But it also takes away from that socialization aspect where they don't know how to talk to students. And then we just went through COVID, so now kids were even more disconnected, and adults became disconnected and very selfish. And it's all about me, my thoughts and my opinions matter more than everybody. Like, no, that's not how it works. But that's something I'm trying to do myself in my classes. Like, all right, get off the phone. No phones allowed in the gym. You're here to socialize and work on relationships with people and have fun. Like that and kind of in a way, like I know TikTok might be going away in a couple of weeks, but I think it's January 19th. It may or may not happen. According, it's supposed to happen. The ban on the U.S. on TikTok. So a lot of kids are not going to know what to do with themselves because they cannot watch videos.
It's a crisis actually, and I kind of agree with TikTok. Kind of going away. I don't know the full story on that, like in terms of the politics, but in terms of the culture. Because if you take TikTok away, there's always something else, right?
Right, there's Instagram, Facebook, and all that.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not gonna solve that problem, right? And the problem to me is that there's so many kids they're on their phone for too long. Everything's good in moderation, right? So I'm not saying to do away with the phones or anything like that, but what is it that we can do? I think as an educator, like the fact that these stories, these reels are so quick. And we're just so getting used to like, I just want to hear 10 seconds of this and then move to the next. So that attention span is not being trained or groomed to listen to these conversations.
Yeah, and then it's very similar to like, hey, watch this 3-hour movie. Oh no, a 3-hour movie? No way. But you give them a series. It's like 5 seasons, 45 minutes long each one. They're like, yeah, I just binged the whole thing. I'm like, that was like 48 hours of content you just consumed, but you didn't want to watch a 3-hour movie.
Because it doesn't make sense. Broken up.
Because it's broken up, right? So I mean, I know you remember Vine. Vine was a 3-second video. That's all you got, right? Yes. And then and you just keep scrolling and keep consuming content. That's the same process it does for Instagram, where you do reels and this and that, and TikTok. It's there to get you addicted to scrolling and looking for more content. And as the more you scroll, the more it learns about you and what you like and what you don't like, and it starts feeding you exactly the same thing. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's hard to break them out of it when parents are not doing that to structure the amount of time they're on it.
Yeah, the parents, that's the easiest babysitter. There you go.
Well, since they're like 2 years old, they give them an iPad.
And they're like, the kids are like, they're crying. I've seen it like several times with different people. The kids are like, and once you give them the tab,
Yep,
it's insane, bro. And to me, like as adults, we're like, oh my god, we're conceptualizing that, but the kid doesn't know what's happening. Like,
no, the kid's getting entertained.
And to me, I see that like the Matrix. Like when it claps on, it's like clapping on. Remember the Matrix? I'm just like, whoa, this is a whole different time we're in.
And I think that there is, like you said, there is a time and place for it, and there's a way to apply it. Obviously, like kids need to know technology. They can learn through technology, which is great.
Right.
But at the same time, it should not be the end all and be all where everything has to be on there. I literally, when I'm in the classroom with the students, the kids ask me a question. I'm like, if only there was a supercomputer in your pocket that had all the answers to the world. And they're like, what? I'm like, Google it, right? There's certain things that you can refer them to Google if it's a simple question. If it becomes a concept where I have to break something down more in depth, then I will do it. But if it's a simple thing like, how to spell something, go Google it. That's okay.
Right.
That's fine. That's the fine and dandy. But there's also applications where you can, like, a lot of students don't even know that there's a calculator on there. There's a weather app, like all these essential things that you need to be using on a daily basis that could help you are not something that they're using. So,
and no one's told them about it, right? No one's
right, and how to use it correctly. And one of the biggest things right now with my students in PE, I'm like, your job is to be here on time. Your job is to be here daily. Your job is to participate. Now, if you can't be here for your job, you need to call off. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. If I don't show up, I need to know the adults that are in charge of me that I'm not coming in. So I'm the adult in charge of you. So if you are not coming into class, if you are sick, if you need to babysit your brother and sister because mom can't do it, you need to call off, or else you lose your points for the day.
Yeah, follow up.
You need to be held accountable, learn how to communicate. So I'm trying to instill these basic things that have gone away. That was common sense, right? So try to instill common sense in as much as I can. From being, now I'm old school, right? I'm not a young chicken anymore, but but we get to see that, right? So as we become older educators, we start to see where the gaps are.
Yeah, no, and it's also like because we are older, right? We understand what it means to process these experiences. When we were young, we weren't thinking about this, right?
No, you're not.
So I get it in that sense, but what I see in terms of the culture, right? I had a former student. She's a counselor, a high school counselor, and we were talking about this because in my community relations class, we actually do talk about this culture. We're like, look, we're in a different age, right? I myself, I remember my freshman year at U of I Urbana-Champaign. We were the first incoming freshman class to receive an email address, right? Because this is 92.
Yeah.
Right. That was when the shift was made, right? And so we were the first, right? So we're like, I threw it away. A lot of people were like, we didn't know what that was. We threw it away. We would walk around and we would see people on Pine. Back then it was Pine. And back then it was the old school computers that with the dark screen and the green numbers and letters. And you're like, hey, bro, I'm talking to this girl from Spain. Hey, I'm talking to this girl from Argentina, right? And you're like, what? And you can't see their images, but you're just like talking to somebody. It was the coolest thing, bro. Like what? And it took me back to the movie Revenge of the Nerds. I don't know if you remember that movie. But remember when they were talking within the network? I was like, shit, like I'm doing that, right? With some person in Asia. So then I was like, how do you get in here? You need your email address. And what the hell is that? That's the little slip that you threw away. So in knowing that, I tell people like, I'm that generation that knows both sides.
Yes.
I knew how the world was before digital, this culture, right? Social media. These kids don't. They have nothing. They have nothing to refer to. So it really is. And I talk about this with my students who are teachers, right? I'm like, hey, it's who's going to introduce them to that? So you're doing it. I'm glad to hear you're doing it. Like making it a point to be like, all right, let's pause, put that to the side. We're going to engage. And this is why I invite you to do your training and activities with my students because like that's your expertise. We have all these different games to bring people together for different purposes, right? And it's like when we did that, my students loved it because it wasn't me lecturing.
Oh yeah, sometimes it takes a different voice for it to click, especially as a teacher. You understand that quickly,
right? But then in terms of, let me go back to my student who was a counselor. She's like Dr. Cortez. Like it's common when I talk to a student and they're not being verbal, they're just kind of like nodding or whatever. And I always tell them like, look, if you have more to share with me, feel free to send me a text. And then she says it's common that like 10 minutes after they leave, they send me this long text. They're more comfortable in elaborating through text than in person and verbally.
I mean, it's good that they're able to communicate and put their thoughts onto a way to share, but at the same time, they're afraid of conflict. They're afraid of conversation.
Right.
It's And I keep, that's another thing I instill. Like, if you're talking to me, you're facing me and looking me in the eye, because they'll start talking and walking off. And I'm like, my ears are over here and you're talking in that direction. So I don't know what you told the wall, but I didn't hear anything.
Right. Right.
It's like, it's a mutual respect. So, and I do that with my students. In the first week or something like that, they'll have a conversation. I just walk off. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, this is what you guys do.
Right.
I'm like, how'd you feel about that? Well, I didn't like that. Okay. So why would you think I would like that? So, and I keep telling you, I reciprocate your energy. If you come at me hostile, then I will come at you hostile. Understand this, that I have more years of experience being hostile than you've been alive. So let's take it down a little bit, take a deep breath, diffuse the situation, compose your thoughts in a positive format, and then we can have a conversation. So take a minute, think about what I just said, and then come back to me. And it just, they diffuse, because I made them think like, oh man.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So
and that's dope, because the fear from educators is like, I don't know how this kid's gonna respond, right? And I don't want conflict myself, right? Like I'm teaching here. These kids are the bad kids, right? When you already have that lens, you're like, oh, okay, like I ain't really trying to invest too much because I just don't know how they're gonna spark off on me and then make my day terrible. So I'd rather not, right? Just kind of like, I want to suppress them. And that's the mistake that teachers do, because like what you're doing, you're up front. And I'm like, hey, I'm letting you know this shit doesn't work for me, and I'm letting you know it doesn't work for you. Like,
right.
Other teachers want to suppress it, and then something blows up eventually because it's gonna come out one way or another, right? One of my other former students, Jorge Edby, cool cat from New York, real cool brother, man. And he learned about restorative practices in my class. And he was like, Dr. Cortez, he goes, I do training sessions now for, what was it? Classroom,
classroom management?
No. How is it like de-escalating situations?
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, no one teaches teachers how to de-escalate situations in the classroom. And it's true. It is true. Like when you're in the teacher's college, wherever you're getting your degree from, everything's ideal. You really don't get,
it's Charlotte Danielson and this.
Right. This, right. Yeah, they were able to get 3 questions from the classroom. Right. Like, no, there's situations that no one's going to teach you how to address them. So because no one teaches you this, it's really up to the individual to use their own philosophy on how do I address the situation. Some decide to suppress it. I'm gonna call security, right? Just threatening up, but really no engagement. Right?
You're not following up on the threat, so it becomes an empty threat, which means that you have no credibility. So then you even lose the kid even more.
Exactly. So what Jorge does, he's like, I actually do trainings for teachers and for leaders, so they can bring them back to their teachers. And we give them examples, scenarios, and be like, look, this is what you can do. One example is my boy Victor Arroyo, who does a lot of these trainings. He's like, you could just walk over. Your presence alone like demands
proximity. Proximity is the first step, right?
So instead of yelling from the front of the class, hey, you could just walk over and be like, hey, like what's going on? Like just simple stuff. It doesn't have to be confrontational, but little things like that are not given to teachers. So some teachers are scared, right? Or I shouldn't say scared, but scared of a confrontation. They want to make sure.
Yeah. I've seen that in my years of teaching, but also you have people that are, let's say, book smart and got a degree, but don't have any social skills, right?
Yes.
So your job as a teacher is to be social. It's not to be, I'm just going to teach this content and everyone's just going to do the work and absorb it. No, there has to be a social interaction. And again, this is multiple years of this, but I've also, I had a career in finance, and that's all you do. You're selling, you're talking to people, being personable. And I keep when I do have someone new, I'm like, hey, when you get to work, after you put down your stuff on your office and you're about to go see, open the door for the kids, think about it as the red light comes on. They're like, what light? I'm like, lights, camera, action. You are doing a performance for the next 7.5 hours. Your job is to entertain them and educate them. Okay. So if you're having a bad day, you can't let them see that. They're like, why? I'm like, Eventually you can, when you have them, a couple months, when you can start divulging maybe a little bit of personal information. That's cool. But at the beginning, like, camera, lights, action, let's go. This is what we're doing. This is the procedures. If you have a question, I'm going to be walking around. Boom, boom, boom. Something's out of pocket, address it right away. Nip it in the butt. If they're late, don't yell at them because they're late. They know they're late. That doesn't solve the issue. You know they're late. They know they're late.
Right.
You know what? Tell the students, go put their stuff down, get settled, walk over to them in a couple minutes. Hey, is everything okay? I saw you were late today. Did you miss the bus? Did you oversleep? They'll tell you what the issue is. As long as you don't come as a confrontational adult.
Exactly.
They are so in tune to, or so ingrained, that anytime they have a conversation with an adult, that it's a negative interaction, that I am in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, man, we're just going to have a conversation about this. And then you have the other aspect of it where you have kids, like you said, that are very shut down. They don't want to have a conversation. That's where you put it on. That's the performance you got to give. Find something that's calming with that child, that student, that you can build something off with. And it may be the smallest thing ever.
It's the smallest thing in terms of like, oh, you like baseball? Okay, did you see that the Dodgers won? Like, just anything. I saw that.
Anything, oh, I like this shirt. Do you like that artist? I like that artist. It's the smallest little thing that makes that connection that will get you that student. And now those students will run through a wall for you. And I keep teaching that to the younger teachers, and I'm like, you have to build relationships. You're not gonna do it all 50 kids all on one day. Every day, pick a different kid.
And when I tell students, I'm like, look, when we say relationships, we're not saying you have to know them and hug them and tell them I love you and like, we're not gonna be your best friend, like. Because some people are like, no, I don't do that kumbaya stuff. And I go, bro, I'm not asking you to do that kumbaya stuff. I'm just asking you to be present and to be engaging. Like you need to know who your students are in order for you to know how to get with them with the knowledge, right? Like how to make this curriculum be relevant to them. And in that, from a community relations class, I had a former student, Martin, I forgot his last name, short, cool white boy from Iowa, like just quiet, like he looked like one of the footloose characters. I mean, I'm not dissing him, but I'm just saying, like right, because Iowa and then being in Chicago is different. But a cool young brother, right? He paid a lot of respect, and vice versa. And he was like, "Hey, Dr. Cortez, can I invite my aunt? She does a lot of work on trauma-informed practices and teaching." I was like, "Cool." His aunt and I think it was someone in her family. He was a pediatrician and she was a first grade teacher. And they've known each other for so long. It wasn't until they both retired that they had this conversation. They were like, we have more in common than we realize. Because you're a pediatrician and I'm a first grade teacher. And so they wrote this book about trauma-informed practices, right? And so they came and they actually presented my class for free because they knew Martin. And it was love, bro. It was love. And one of the games that they introduced me to, that I introduced to my students now in class, is called Know My Name. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it is, what they recommended, like if you have a small school, then get all the teachers, right? Put all the names of students and the picture if you have, if you can't put it on the wall, then all the teachers will walk around and say, I have some type of conversation with this student. To your point, right? Something like baseball, whatever. And then when we finish, we see which students were not written on. That means that no one's talking to this student. And then we identify those to be, okay, who's going to make it a point to kind of try to connect with this person, right? So they said that because they're like, we know the importance of just saying, I see you. I see you. Like we're not getting deep, right? I'm not trying to solve your family's crisis. Like, no, I'm just saying, hey, did you catch that yesterday? Yeah, good. All right, Steven. Right, I see you, bro. That's all. And so when I show that to my students, they love it, bro. They love it. And I also tell them, like, if you have a big school, you can do it by grade levels, right? So you want to break it down where it's not too massive, but it's just very simple, very intentional, right? Going back to my nephew, little Louis, when he got kicked out of school one time, and asked him, I go, did anybody talk to you? And he's like, no, they just flew me to the office, did the paperwork, and pick me up.
Yep.
Nobody trying to talk to me. You
Yep.
know?
Yeah,
So,
that was the school system back in the day. It's like, all right, you caused trouble, bye, see you later.
Gotta go. Boom. All right. You know. So it's a lot of that, man. But you know, connecting this like to the neighborhood, being around people, going back to Cubs. No, you're a Sox fan, but I used to be a Cubs fan, not anymore. But what's dude's name that caught in the field?
Bartman.
Bartman.
Steve Bartman.
So we were watching the game. I was in Champaign in grad school with a group of folks watching the game. And when that happened, the first thing I said was like, that dude grew up in the suburbs. Because when you grew up in the city, you respect space. You have to know where you need to be.
Yeah.
And if you're not where you need to be, you're going to get your ass kicked. Right. And that dude was just like, you know, the ball's coming to me. I'm going to grab it. That's my opinion on that. Right. You know, people have different opinions. But in terms of that, we know how to rub elbows. We know how to get out of the way, right? We know how to just like know where you're at. You can't be acting like that, right? And he was not from the city. And so for me, like in knowing how to rub elbows and knowing that when you go to a party, somebody pushes you back, it's not personal.
No, it's not.
You know, and you know the difference. You know when somebody. No. Right. So what I'm getting at is like these social skills are important to mingle, to get around, you know, and we've been taught that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's enforced in my classes. You're gonna get to know everybody, you know, make sure you know everybody's name. Yeah, find out something about them, and then it's funny because like this is our first week in the second semester, so new set of kids, they know of each other,
right?
But like my last class, it's a mosh posh of kids that I've had before and some kids that I've never had. And they had an open gym Friday because they did all my team building all week without any complaints. They participated, they did great. So I'm like, okay, you earned your open gym on Friday. And then you had kids playing volleyball and some kids playing basketball, some kids throwing the football, some kids playing badminton. And then about that 10 minutes, you see some of the kids switch and go play with a different group. And so then they go play with a different group. And I was like, I'm just observing because I'm like, okay, let's see how far this goes. And do they actually interact or just try to take over their space? No, they were actually, you know, we're done playing football, so we're going to play volleyball with you guys. And, you know, they're chopping it up and laughing. All right, cool. Right. Then they went back to shooting half-court shots. And then they looked at badminton. They're like, nah, we'll leave those girls alone. They're fine. And, you know, but there were certain groups that were just kind of rotating, playing a little bit of everything. But that doesn't happen without laying the foundation of doing the team building where you're sitting next to each other and you got to work with this person that you don't know. You've got to hold hands with someone you don't know. You know, and I tell them, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, and that's the only way you're going to get over being uncomfortable is by being put in this situation, or else you're going to be in a bubble scared your entire life. You've got to come out of that bubble and you've got to expose yourself and go out there. And I tell them, you're not going to hit any shots if you don't take one.
Right. Michael Jordan.
You've got to do it. Oh, man. You got a little bit more time or you got to go?
Yeah, I'm good. We got, we're at 1:13.
I got 1:13.
15 minutes.
That sounds good. You talked about your schools and neighborhood. You went to Mitchell, then you went to Wells?
I went to Prosser.
So how did that happen?
So I went to I graduated from Mitchell 1988. Right?
Yeah.
And then during that time, Clemente and Wells, which was our both community schools, they just had a lot of fights. You know, everybody I talked to, my brother went there. You know, talking about fights. There was a lot of tensions, right, between gangs.
Yep.
You had Latinos who were from the neighborhood, and you had the Cabrini Green Black folks coming in. So, you know, it's just all kinds of things, right? But what was weird, not weird, but like my brother was part of the football team, so he got along with everybody because everybody was in it, right? Yeah, right. White folks, black folks, Latino, and so he knew all the heads, you know, and he was good. But in terms of the stories, right? Like, man, there was another like the whole second floor was just like a riot. Like, I'm just like, what? There's one dude. They had like a pageant show And he came out, he had his eye busted, he had a patch because he got that from one of the riots.
Wow.
And I'm just like, whoa, Clemente is similar, right?
Yeah.
Violence, saying that. And I didn't want to go there, right? I'm like, I ain't trying to be in a school like that. Like, and it wasn't just Clemente and Wells, right? During that time, Bogan, Farragut in the South Side, they would come out in the news. There was like, riots between Black and Mexican students. Like, so I talk about that all the time because it's important. I'm like, what are these schools doing? Right? It wasn't it was more trying to keep them away from each other, but that was just distant, to create more distance and like wanting them to create this tension even more. But like so because of that violence, I was like, Prosser was kind of like a good school, right? Because it didn't have that reputation. And you're talking about someone in 8th grade, so it's not like I was breaking it down with data. It was just this feeling like this school seems safer. I wanted to go to Whitney Young, right? I wanted to go to Lane Tech. I didn't get accepted. I didn't get accepted, and it's crazy because my principal didn't vouch for me.
What?
Even though I don't remember, what was it, the Iowa test?
Yeah.
The Iowa test. So if you were in 8th grade and you scored like 9.8, they would say like you understand math at a freshman level.
Correct.
Right? So I was at 14.2.
Mm-hmm. You knew more than the principal.
Right. I was like beyond, but I was also a little like smart ass, I used to get myself in trouble. Part of it was because yes, I was a high performing student. I'm not gonna say I'm the smartest, right? But for sure highest performing. And so the teacher would wanna kind of like take me away from my crew, right? From my friends and being silly. So I think I would act up a little bit more just to let them know that I'm not this like,
nerd.
Teacher's pet. Yeah, nerd. Right. So I was a little smart ass and it got to the point where the principal like took it personal and they didn't vouch for me. Right. And so, because everybody was like, oh, you're going to go. All my friends were like, oh, yeah, 14.2, you're going to go to like wherever you want to go. Right. So I didn't get accepted. And then I ended up going to Prosser because I didn't want to go to neighborhood schools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met George. Right. I met George, many great friends. But yeah.
Which is weird. The same thing, right? Like he grew up in the neighborhood and didn't want to go to Wells, didn't want to go. Well, I think his brother went to Wells, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another reason, right?
Yeah. Jose.
So Jose went to Wells. So that's it was kind of similar to me. I would get in trouble because I was so smart and I'd be done my work so quickly. And I'm like, all right, what else do I do now? I'm gonna be a clown, right? You're gonna be a class clown. You're gonna be acting out. Put a performance on. Definitely, that was my mouth got me in trouble a lot. So, so I'm constantly in trouble at Columbus, but they're like, man, he's too smart. Like he's bored essentially. So it took my 6th grade teacher, Miss Paglini, to be like, okay, he's acting out for a reason. So she made the effort, and then she was like, well, I know back in the day they used to have like the little pamphlet, like leaflet, and the riff would come in, and you can buy books and this and that. Yeah. And I was huge into baseball, trading cards, and I kind of still am. But she was like, well, you can't do any baseball. I am not gonna buy you any baseball. But what else would you like from there? And I was like, well, those president cards looks pretty cool. And she's like, all right, cool. But she bought me a set of president's cards, and then she's like, all right, memorize them. So I literally would look at the cards, and like she put me to work on something that I loved, which was baseball cards, but just transition it to a more educational purpose. Right. All right, cool. You like baseball cards? These are president cards. Learn all the facts about all the presidents and stuff like that. So I ended up having an appreciation for history. That's what we were talking about, to put it all together, right?
Right.
This is the teacher that made that extra effort. We're talking about the neighborhood kid who's a troublemaker because he's smart, just like me and you. You want to go to a good school. The principal knows you're a smart ass because you're in his office every damn week. And then I ended up doing my student teaching there as well. That's funny. Oh yeah. And we have these experiences, and it's like you didn't want to be the nerd because that's not cool, and you don't want to be made fun of. So you're gonna act out even though you're smart to be accepted by both sides of the communities.
Yeah.
So then you become well-rounded, and then you end up being able to socialize, and you also are sarcastic asshole. But you appreciate everything else that you're learning. Like, it was such a well-rounded education that we had because of the neighborhood that we grew up with.
Right.
And the roots started here, and the roots started at, growing into Commercial Park, and then we get to our alternative high school, because I did not want to go to either one of those, and I did apply to Prosser, did not get in, and then I got my letter from Lane Tech that I did get in. So that was my only other option. Yeah, I didn't get us up to the Prosser, which I have no idea how that's happened or whatever, but
fill capacity,
they were probably at capacity. Yeah,
you're at Z, bro. It's Vaso.
Yeah, I was at the bottom of the list. I knew that was happening, man. But yeah, then we have a very similar experience like that, where we didn't want to be part of the riffraff. I mean, some of them were our friends, and some of the people were from the neighborhood, but we understood that. We're like, we don't want to do that. Like, my mom was working with those youth. She was working with kids. I guess they were kids. They were 18, so teenagers at that point. From DW, Division Walcott, the Kings. Right. And I'd go to the center over there on Division Walcott. They used to have a little center for them to, be out of the streets and do stuff. And they had computers there. So I'm playing video games with, the head of the Kings from there, and the lieutenants and this and that. And they're like, man, dude, if anybody messes with you, you let us know. I'm like, they're like, even the Kings from your neighborhood. I'm like, nah, everybody's cool, man. We're good.
Right, good. That's good.
Good to know.
Good to know. Like, okay.
And also, you kind of got like a pass to walk to the neighborhood without getting in trouble, right? Because back then they didn't know you from the neighborhood. You may not walk out.
So yeah, and that's a great segue. Segue. My brother Lou used to work at the gas station on Division and Damon.
Yeah,
the Shell gas station.
Shell, the Puerto Rican Shell.
So the head of the Kings, I don't know if it was the same one, but Lewis, Professor. So we knew Professor because he actually grew up on Chicago Avenue, across the street from us, right?
Okay.
So I knew him since I was a kid. Before he became a King, he used to run our Guardian Angels, and my brother Gerardo used to actually go with him. Oh shit! I got to connect my battery. Okay, all right. I used to row with him. When I gotta close this, I have it connect. All right, cool. I think I'm good now. Yeah. Okay. So, can you see me? Hear me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like frozen, right? Okay. So, we knew him going through those different phases, and then my brother, Lewis we knew Gaspar. Gaspar is, I don't know if you know Michelle. What's her name? Gomez. She's the one that runs the Sangria Festival.
Okay.
In Humboldt Park.
I don't know her.
So she's the one. Her and her sister Melissa. We all grew up together on Chicago Avenue, Puerto Rican, right? They're the ones that ran the Puerto Rican Festival last year for the first time. Okay. They do the Sangria Fest, all of that, right? So their father and stepfather was the guy who owned Shell gas station. He hired my brother Lewis when he was in high school. He was going to Wells, right? So his first day, bro, he's like, man, a bunch of Kings walked in, and they grabbed me, pulled me over the counter, took me outside. They're like, bro, we know you go to Wells, bro. You know you're a fucking, you're a flake, like all this stuff. And then he hears like, dude, let me see his face. Let me see his face. And then it's Professor. And he's like, oh, man, I know this guy. I was like, oh, thank you so much. He's like, you have no idea, right? He saved him, right, from getting his ass whipped. But that's how the neighborhood was, to your point, right? Like, people don't know who you are. They affiliate you like, oh, he goes to Wells. That means he's folks, right? Like, all of that. But Professor, like, because he knew my brother was, I don't know, I know this brother, but like leave him alone.
Right, he's good.
He's good. But that was right, DW, Division of Winchester back in the day.
Division Winchester, Division Walcott. Yeah, that whole area, which was that was funny because my mom works over there at that school at used to call it Anderson. Now it's LaSalle too.
LaSalle too.
That's where she's been there forever. So
wow, I'm glad they kept her, bro, because I know they had a change, a transition.
Yeah. I mean, she's close to retiring. She's sticking it out. It's pretty bad. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Man, this has been fun, dude. We got to do this again. We'll continue talking about the neighborhood and everything else. But we talked from education to growing up to life stories about our friends who get thrown over counters.
Yeah, and well, that was my brother. And the last, let me end it with this. In terms of, I didn't go to Wells, I didn't go to Clemente. I went to Prosser, and I'm blessed to go to Prosser because like it was a third black, a third Latino, and a third white.
It was very diverse at that point. Yeah.
Yes, and we didn't have that intensity in terms of those relationships. I had my 30-year reunion. 2.5 years ago. We still get along, right? And it's great to see that, right? Latino, black folks, white folks, like, what's up, bro? Remember you? Boom, boom, boom. So I feel blessed to have not been in that type of turmoil. In Chicago, 100%. It's easy, bro. It's easy. I remember my friend, another Gabriel, he was at Bogan. He's like, bro, I have black friends. And we all understood when the shit went down, you had to take sides, but we wouldn't fight each other directly. It's just like, man, that's crazy. So but anyway, I had to end it with that because in terms I don't want, not all schools were like that.
No, not all.
And these relationships are important, right? Because we grew up in an area where without black folks, we had one or two black students in our school. Our neighborhood was racist, right? Especially in my side. You had the C-notes will make sure those black youth were running around, right? And that was real, and so it helped develop this fear of black folks. I wouldn't say hatred. The ones that hated black folks were the ones who would say the N-word, but this passion behind it, right? And then you would have folks be like, oh, don't go over there. It's the black community. That was more fear and ignorance, right?
Yeah.
Not so much hatred. So I explained that to people. So then going to Prosser, then I met so many people from the West Side. And I was like, they're just as diverse as we are. You got the nerds, you got the ballers, you got the, of course, the gangsters, the troublemakers, whatever. But not everyone's the same, right? And it really helped me break down that stereotype, right, of the black community, and help make the person that I am today, man. So
yeah. It definitely helps that we have that diverse education in different aspects, whether it's through school, through neighborhoods, and now as higher ed. It's just great, and it just makes you understand that people are just people, man, and It's okay to talk to everybody. It's okay to have relationships with everybody. Everyone bleeds red. That's what I say. Everyone bleeds red. One way you don't bleed red, we might have a problem.
Right. I know. Even though it's blue before it bleeds. So.
Yeah, without oxygen, yes. If it doesn't have oxygen, it will be blue. Cool. Oh man, this has been great, man. Thanks for being InPodSicated with me, man. It was a great time, and we'll do this again in a couple months, man.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I could talk about many things, bro. Remember, I'm a historian too, so we could bring it in different ways. Definitely. And I'm into sports somehow, but not as much as you. But
no, this isn't really a sports one. Sports, we'll leave it at TCSF, the Two Chicago.
Okay.
This is more for conversational and educational stuff, but this is to show my other passions. But man, this has been great, Gabriel, Dr. Cortez. Thank you for joining me on InPodSicated, and we'll do this again.
All right, man. All right, Big Z, man. Take care. Have a lovely weekend, bro.
All right.
All right, peace.